we're going to talk about teacher burnout this afternoon. And if you want to read more about international statistics, I highly recommend that you Google Teacher Burnout 21. There's a blog with the most fascinating information. But I decided I don't want to talk about statistics this afternoon. I don't want to talk about general trends in the world. I want to talk about you. You've decided to attend this afternoon, so this session is for you. So teacher burnout. One of the most important things about teacher burnout is to recognize that you may be experiencing some burnout. Gentlemen, I do apologize for the female picture, but sometimes we work with what is available on YouTube. So let's just make this for everybody. So when we think about teacher burnout, recognizing that you're about to burn out or are in the process of burning out is one of the most important steps in taking some action. They talk about the 4 levels of awareness. There's unconscious incompetence. In other words, you don't know you don't know. Then there's conscious incompetence. Now you know your well-being is not at the level that it should be. Then there's an intervention period. And after an intervention like this afternoon, it's a little bit slow going because then we become consciously competent at looking after ourselves a little bit more. And then finally, if you practice that over a period of time, because neuroscience says, you know, the old saying, practice makes perfect, that's true. But the neuroscience says repetition facilitates myelination. And myelination means it becomes a hardwired skill. It becomes a hardwired competence. In the moment a pathway, a thought pattern, behavior becomes myelinated, what happens next is you become unconsciously competent at personal well-being, for example. So the purpose at this stage in this presentation this afternoon is to look at the signs of burnout. So there are 7. And if you look at this slide and the fact that the blocks underlined is irritating you, it's actually the first sign of burnout, because not everything has to be perfect. You see, in our lives, so often we try to control everything. I think if the pandemic has been exceptionally effective, it's in alerting us to the fact that we actually have very little control. And the sooner we realize that the majority of things in life is not under our control, and therefore choose not to try and make everything perfect, it's the first step towards looking after yourself. There's a beautiful saying, well, it's not beautiful, but it's a very, very accurate saying. They say perfectionism is the ultimate form of self-abuse. Perfectionism is the ultimate form of self-abuse. So we cannot aspire to perfection in ourselves, around in our families, in our classroom, and in the greater world. So let's look at the signs of burnout. So the first one is if you often battle with headaches and muscle tension. So I want to encourage you, it's a 7-point scale. So just give yourself a score out of 7, okay? A sense of apathy or over complaining. So apathy, and we'll talk a bit more about apathy a little bit later, but apathy that I don't care. I just don't care anymore. It's a very dangerous phase to be in, but just to recognize that. Or constantly complaining. So over complaining, complain about everything, as though somebody else can do something about it. Feelings of being overwhelmed, feeling cynical, feeling frustrated and unfulfilled. So that's just 1 point, 1 out of 7. Do you recognize that you absolutely feel depleted after work? Does your work give you energy, or does it deplete your energy levels? A tendency towards irritability and losing your temper quite often. Trouble with sleeping patterns. Sunday night blues before work. So if you look at your score out of 7, if you scored, well, so how would you score this? Obviously tick if it's true for you. So if you ticked more than 2 of these points, it's a warning signal. It says, SOS, pay attention. Let's do something about that. So many people think that our thoughts, our emotions, and our bodies are separate. And it's actually been part of scientific academic learning for many years. So there's cognition, there's emotions, and the body. But Elmer Green, who's a physician at the Mayo Clinic in America, he says it's not true. We know it's not true because what you think affects how you feel and how your body responds. What you feel affects your thinking and how your body responds. How your body feels affects yourself on an emotional level and also in terms of your thoughts. So these 3 are not individual or separate categories. They actually intertwine. And if you change one, it has an effect, a knock-on effect on the other 2. But what is very interesting, you cannot change your emotions because emotions are never primary responses. They're reactions. You can come up with a new thought. You can come up with a new behavior. But in emotions, according to Candace Bird, a neuroscientist, in her book, Molecules of Emotions, she said very clearly that emotions are chemical reactions. They're never primary. So we can't change our feelings. We can change our thoughts that will enable our feelings to change. We can change our posture, we can change our behavior, and it will make a difference on how you feel. But Elmer Green says, if we want to really make a difference, we need to choose where we're going to intervene. And for this afternoon, we're just going to unpack burnout a little bit. We're going to look at the mental components thereof. We're going to look at what is the knock-on emotional effect. How does it impact on your world, your life? We're going to look at your physical body and what do you experience on a physical level. But most importantly, we're going to look at how to change. If you ticked a couple of those behaviors in the previous slide, how can you change it? Because change is possible even October or November of this year. So the work of David Hawkins, not Stephen Hawkins, the world-renowned clever person, but David Hawkins, he wrote a book, Power versus Force. And he made this amazing statement. He said, every emotion that we experience carries a level of influence. So if you look at the screen right at the bottom, when you experience shame, it carries an influence level of 20. If you feel guilt, it carries an influence level of 30. If you feel apathy, so in essence, apathy is better than shame and guilt. So check in your mind, what do you experience? That carries an influence level. It means how much emotional energy are you sharing, have you got to share with others? Grief, 75. Fear, 100. It's a huge motivator for some people, and that's why it carries energy when you experience fear, and also to put fear to affect other people in a fearful way. Also, they experience a sense of fear. Desire, can you see? Now we're on an influence level of 125. Anger, whoa! Somebody explained it once that anger, as anything else, as we said, emotions aren't primary, it's secondary responses. But anger is always hiding something else. He explained it beautifully. He said, the moment you feel vulnerable or you feel intensely vulnerable or negative or fearful, what we tend to do is we tend to fetch anger. Anger is like when you're a little child and you fetch your big brother to come and fight for you. Because can you see, anger carries quite a bit of emotional energy, 150. Pride takes even a little bit more. But the problem with these emotions is it's the out of control zone. It's when you're stuck in limiting and even negative thought patterns. Everything is effort. You are tired. Everything you do carries effort. You need force. You force yourself to move forward. And that force results in poor sleeping patterns, poor eating patterns, so that in the end, you need medication to go to sleep. And then the next morning, you need coffee or energy drinks to give you a boost to move forward. This is dangerous zone. That means on a physical level, the chemistry of your body is getting depleted, okay? Marvelous thing about Albert Einstein, one of the many marvelous things about him, he said you cannot solve problems from the same level of thinking that created them. So the moment you're in that survival state, you're in that close to burnout state, you cannot, from that level, change your behavior, change your thinking, or change the way you feel. You need to go one level up. And David Hawkins said for that you need courage. He said the level of courage, which has an influence level of 200. So the moment you move to a position of courage to do what? Courage to not accept the situation that you're in, the way it is and the way it makes you feel. Just that the courage to say, I've had enough. This has to stop. The courage that is, and the energy that's released the moment you move to that level of courage is the tipping point. It's the tipping point. And David Hawkins has done tremendous work in this field. And if you want to go and Google, and if you want to read more, he's written a superb book. I think next to My Holy Book, this is one of the most informative, powerful books that I've ever read in my life. It's called Power versus Force. Because David says, the moment you move to the position of courage, I'm not going to accept this anymore, come what may. So if apathy says, I don't care, courage is not the same as apathy. It also says, on one level, it says, I don't care what the repercussions are going to be, but I have to stand and I have to say no more. No more to what? Well, it depends on your life and what's happening in it. But the moment you move into that position of courage, energy is released on the inside, and that creates internal driving force or power from within. And then it becomes easier to trust. Can you see that level of energy and influence is 250? Optimism, 310. Forgiveness. And look, we can spend an entire afternoon about each of these. Forgiveness carries more energy than trust or optimism. And that's why forgiveness is so incredibly important. It's wonderful to forgive anybody else, but the most important thing is the energy that will give you to love more, because you'll see love is way up there. Understanding. I don't know if you've ever heard Laurence Olivier when it's a small quote from the musical Time. And Laurence Olivier recites it, and he says, reason is the greatest gift of all, because with reason, but also having reasons for. Reason is the greatest gift of all, because with reason comes understanding, and with understanding comes caring, and with caring comes love. It's very difficult to love if you don't understand. It's very difficult to understand if there are no reasons for things. So reasons or reasoning and having reasons for things promotes understanding, and understanding, the moment we understand something. Isn't that interesting that forgiveness comes before understanding? So it's that act of I choose to let it go that precedes understanding, because very often when we let something go, the natural consequence of that is an increase in energy levels, but it also releases us from our survival part of the brain, and it takes us up to the more rational thinking part of the brain, which supports understanding. And you know, we always think of the brain as this marvelous thing that we can think with, which it is. And it's very interesting that we experience emotions in our heart, but actually that's a physical pump. We do not experience emotions in our heart. Well, I don't quite agree, because I definitely feel it in my heart. I know what it feels when my heart is breaking, because there's something so incredibly sad. I was speaking at another webinar the other evening, and it was about stress and how when stress rears its ugly head, and it was at a girls' school. And towards the end of the webinar, I was so deeply touched, and I definitely felt it down here in my chest when 4 of the 6 questions that were asked that evening weren't asked by parents. The questions were asked by pupils. How do I get my parents to listen to this talk? Because one of the most important things about coping with stress is to know that you've got backup. Somebody's got your back. And when it's about children, it's incredibly important that they know somebody's got my back, and preferably my parents or an older sibling or family or a friend, or just a marvelous teacher, not just because a teacher is less, but somebody needs to have our backs, also us as adults. So the moment you experience emotions, we often experience it in our hearts, but it actually, emotions are processed and experienced just above your palate. That's where the emotional part of your brain is. But why do we feel it down here? Well, some research alludes to the fact that the cellular structure of the limbic system, the emotional part of the brain, and your physical heart is similar. And that's why there's an echo effect in our hearts. Useless information, but there we go. So the moment there's forgiveness and understanding, the level of influence and energy that's released in us is phenomenal, and it takes us towards love. An energy value, a level of influence. So what does that mean? It means that when you do what you do with love, your level of influence is so much better, so much wider than when you do things from a level of anger, for instance. And then gratitude, even more, joy, even more, and peace, even higher in terms of influence. So as a teacher, I don't know if we get to this level very often. As a teacher, we definitely hit moments of joy. And you know, that's part of life. We don't have a joyous life. We have moments of joy through the course of the day. And I have a very personal way of chasing joy. I don't chase happiness. Happiness is outside. It's what we eat, what we drink, what we see, who we with. But joy is like a fountain from the inside. And I have a bit of a game that I play with myself every single day of my life. I do believe God, the world, however you want to relate to a spiritual level, is out to spoil me. Not just me, everybody else. And because I'm Afrikaans speaking, we often use the word spoil in the most positive senses. It's going to spoil me. I'm going to get a surprise. I am on the lookout for a positive surprise every moment of every day. At the moment, I can't see you, which I'm very, very sorry about, because there's just so much that is lost in communication if we can't see each other. But I am sending you as much love as I possibly can. And I'm waiting for some kind of a joyous release this afternoon. Well, definitely in myself, but I definitely hope in you as well. So joy releases tremendous energy. And you know, if you look towards the right, they say the moment you live a life of love, gratitude, and joy, extraordinary things happen. Synchronicity, you know, that you didn't work for it. It just happened. This is a marvelous model to incorporate in your life. But the only thing I want you to take away from this part of the presentation is it takes courage to change your situation. I don't mean resign. I don't mean leave your partner. I don't mean relocate, move. I don't mean any of that stuff. The courage to stand up and say no more. And with that comes responsibility. Because what are we going to do next? So I want and I really hope you're a soldier with a weapon, which means a teacher with a pen and paper, or a cell phone where you can make notes, because I want you to for a moment think, let's not do this on an intellectual level. Let's do this in a very practical way. I want you to think, what don't you want anymore? And I'm going to give you a minute. I've got very short minutes because I always want to go to the next thing, but I'm going to give you a minute to think about what is it that you don't want anymore. Don't you want children screaming? Don't you want pressure from the principal? Don't you want nasty comments from parents? Don't you want to feel like an alien in your own family? Why don't you take a minute to just write, what is it that you don't want anymore? Benefit from this session? Choose one. What don't you want anymore? Have you written it down? To just think about something is part of the process, but the moment you've written it down, you've externalized it, and it becomes much easier to think about it. So what don't you want anymore? So typically, such a statement is stated, I don't want blah, 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 blah. Now, choose one, because we can't do 3 or 4 or 5. Choose one. And we're going to do a bit of goal setting, because I want the rest of your afternoon. I want your evening. I want the rest of this week. I want the rest of this year to be a little bit easier for you. And to do that, what we've just done by stating what you don't want, we've brought a level of awareness. What is really getting to you? What is really making you tired? What is grating your nerves? What is depleting your energy? Is it a person? Is it a situation? We're not going to share this. This is private. It's your process. But the moment you've written that down, we've just brought up to a level of awareness. And now we want to think, but what do we want instead? So now we want to state a positive goal. You see, what we often do is we engaged in a lot of mental narratives, mental stories that we tell ourselves and that we think about, and they're never that negative. I don't want to feel tired. That's fine. But the moment you say, I don't want to feel tired, you know what your brain hears? Tired. The brain does not understand a negative command. If I say, don't think of a purple elephant, for your mind not to think about a purple elephant, you first have to think about a purple elephant before you can think of a pink one with orange dots. You understand? So the moment you say, I don't want to be tired, your brain says, oh, tired, I'll give you more of that. I don't want to feel depressed. Oh, you depressed. Okay, a little bit more of that for you. I don't want to feel afraid. I don't want to feel anxious. Oh, you want more fear, you want more anxiety. I'm not joking. It's how the brain works. So what do you want instead? This is not easy, but it's important. We've got an hour. Let's use this for your benefit this afternoon. So what do you want instead? If you don't want to be so tired, what do you want to be? I want to be energetic. I don't want to feel depressed. Okay, so if you're not depressed, how would you be feeling? I'd feel joyous, or whatever you will feel. I had a client at one stage who was on 35 antidepressants per day. And it was very difficult. for this gentleman to function in the everyday life. And because he was so out of it due to the enormous amount of medication, he lost his job. And gradually he was non-functional in his family, and he lost his family as well. So when we started working together, because everything that we do this afternoon, I've been doing in practice for many, many years. So what do you want? He said, I don't want to be depressed. I said, I got it. So how are you going to be when you're not depressed? I'm not going to be depressed anymore. I said, I got it. Okay. But if you're not depressed anymore, what then? And he got frustrated with me because he won't be depressed. But can you hear the thought pattern? There's no life outside of depression. And I don't say this lightly. I don't say it this lightly, but can you see what Albert Einstein meant when he said, we can't solve a problem on the same level as where it occurred. So if it's in the mind that I don't want to feel depressed, and that's your world, you can't get beyond it. It took us forever. Because the moment I give you a goal, it's my goal, it's not yours. Goals need to come from inside. You see, that's why it's such a fallacy when you think people can motivate you. Nobody can motivate you. Motivation is an internal process. There needs to be a goal, and then you need to feel strongly about achieving this goal before anything will happen. So motivation is a clear goal, and the internal emotional that will drive this process, then you'll succeed. The same with this session this afternoon. So the only time I could get my client to go beyond, I don't want to be depressed, was the third session when I asked him, okay, do you know anybody that's not depressed? He said, yes. And I said, what are they like? And he said, they're confident and they're joyous. And I said, okay, so would you like to be like that? He said, yes. And I said, but how would that be? And then he said, I want to be joyous and confident. Can you hear? We had a positive goal, but the joyous and confident is too huge a goal. We go for one at a time, because the more specific your goal, the greater the chances that you'll reach that goal. Many years ago, I was involved in leadership training with prefix in schools. And we were working, it's in the Barriers to Learning book as well. We were working with two groups, and I've got a scientific mind. So when we work with two teams that are going to compete, they have to be equal in distribution. Equal number of sporty children, equal number of less sporty children, equal number of little ones, equal number of medium ones, and little bit bigger ones. And so we divided these two groups, and we asked them to row across the Vaal River towards an island. And all things equal, they should have been at the island at exactly the same time. They weren't. The one group outperformed the other group by far. So immediately afterwards, I wanted to know, what did the group who outperformed the other group, what did they do? Now, they started singing, which creates rhythm. And because rhythm is vastly important in terms of discipline in a classroom and in a school, because when people move together, they work together. When they sing and move together, they work so much better together. That's been one of the perfect recipes of soldiers in the military, because when people move together, they work together. When they move and sing together, they work so much better together. So they said they were singing, which created a rhythm, which enabled them all to move together, but the other group that did that as well. So it wasn't the singing, even though it definitely improved both teams' performance. And so I kept on asking, I couldn't understand that. And in the end, I got it, because the team that outperformed the other team, they didn't aim for the island. They aimed for a tree, a specific tree on the island, because the more specific your goal, the more specific your results. So the team that didn't do so well, there was nothing wrong with their performance. They were not a weaker team. They were not less successful. The problem was their aim was too wide. And because they were aiming for the island, they kept on drifting. The other team that was aiming at a tree on the island, that tree on the island kept them on land. So in the end, the team that lost actually rode way further than the other one. But the criteria was not how the distance, the criteria was speed. So the more defined your goal, the more specific your goal, the more specific your outcome. So if there's joyous and confident, too wide a goal, it's an island, we choose one. So if you look at the goal that you formulated for yourself this afternoon, let's just quickly check something else. Did you say, I want? Because there's a very interesting thing that happens when we say, I want. The mind automatically says it's in the future, it's not a priority now. Did you know that? So the moment you state a goal in the I want, I shall, I must, the brain says it's somewhere, it's sometime. The moment it says I am, it changes something in the brain and it makes it an immediate priority. And you must remember your brain is a slave. It wants to give you what you want, but then you need to know what you want for your brain to be able to give you that. So if you said, I want, please take it out. If you say, I must, please take it out. If you say, I shall, please take it out. Take it out. And if your goal is, I want my principal to, I want the children in my class to, you have no control over them. You have no control over their response. So we need to change that goal too, because we can only change what we have control over. And the only thing you really have control over is yourself. So many, many years ago, when I started public speaking, I'm not a natural public speaker. I'm an introvert. So the first time I had to get onto a stage, it was for a very good cause, and that's why I did it. But I was incredibly intimidated. It's one of the biggest stresses for most people on this earth is public speaking. And then before I went on stage, and I went through the goal setting process for myself, because I do a goal setting process for myself numerous times during every day. And I thought the thing that's freaking me out is, what are people going to think or say? And I said, do you have control over that? No, I don't. So why do you make that your goal? So what do you have control over? Well, I do have control over the way I deliver what I'm going to deliver. And if I want to do it with passion and enthusiasm, that is my goal. To do a presentation with passion and enthusiasm, I have no control over the response of other people. So I can't control it, so it can't be my goal. Are you with me? So check your goal. What is that goal under your control? Because if that goal is under your control, we're going to move forward with this goal. And there's one other thing that you need to check quickly. In that goal of yours, when you reach that goal, how will it impact on other people? We call it the ecology step. So how will it impact on your life? If you say, I want to study full-time next year. Whoa, that's a huge goal. Where's the money going to come from? Time allocation. Check your goal and how will it influence other people. See, many, many, many goals, many dreams. A dream is just one step higher than a goal. So it's wider, and then we start goal setting, it makes it more specific. But the moment we don't consider the implications of reaching this goal, sometimes it's those things that we don't consider, which is impact on our family, which is impact in terms of finances or time or any other resource. So when we don't take those things into consideration, it acts like moles. And what does a mole do? It makes holes. It makes holes in the ground, and it undermines you and your ability to achieve this goal. Okay, so you've got a goal. You know what you don't want. You know what you do want. It is about yourself. It is stated in the now, and you've checked that the implications of this and what the consequences of achieving this goal, what you're going to gain by far outweighs what you're going to sacrifice to get there. Okay, and you know what? When it comes to teacher burnout, very often the sacrifice is just to stop for a moment, to get off the the hamster wheel and just stop and be selfish. You see, the moment you become a teacher, you dedicate your life to other people, and other people always come before you. We consider them before we consider ourselves. And we think it very selfish if you pay attention to your own needs like we're doing this afternoon. Well, if you're not full, if you're not joyous, if you haven't got, you're not above the level of courage in our Hawkins table, what have you got to give? So we have to retreat to advance. We have to retreat to reflect about ourselves, our dreams, our problems, our challenges. And then which of those are we going to address first? Now I want you to if you think of your goal, I want you to score, to rate your current feeling in terms of this goal on a 10-point scale. So 1, it feels impossible. 10, I'm there. 8, it's attainable and I'm nearly there. 5, well, we'll see. So just rate your goal. It's just the load shedding, but we are on a backup system, so all is well. So just rate your goal. How are you feeling? How close to your goal? Goal is a 10 out of 10. How close to that goal? How achievable does it feel at the moment? Please don't do this mentally. Do it in real terms. Write it down. Write it down. Because you see, remember Elmer Green said, if you don't like the way you feel, you need to either change your mind or change your body. Well, when we did the goal setting now, we were working on the mind. We were opening a new file in the brain. And now we're going to wire that file to create repetition builds pathway. We're going to use physical movement to wire that file so it becomes easier for you on a neurophysiological level for you to attain that goal. And to be able to do that, I just want you to sit up straight, everything down, wherever you are. Just take a nice deep breath, but only after you've rated your current, the achievability of your goal, or how close to your goal you are feeling. You have to have that number out of 10 written down somewhere. Then just sit up straight, turn your head and look across your one shoulder and see up to where can you see if you turn your head to the one side and then rotate your head and look across the other shoulder and see up to where can you see if you just turn your head as far as you possibly can. Okay? Now we're going to do a mind move called a neck flexor, where you inhale, you put your hand against your forehead, and you exhale. So your hand is pushing your head back, and your head is pushing against the hand. So they are going to battle it out a little bit. Sometimes it's easier to do both. So you inhale, and then you push your head forward and your hands backwards. And you hold it for a count of 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then we're going to do it to the back as well, because it's always about balance. And you put your hands against the back of your head, breathe in, move your head back, and your hands forward, and exhale for a count of 8. So it's 1, 2, 3, push hard, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Don't just touch, you have to push, and you'll feel the muscles are objecting, especially the muscles in your shoulders and your neck, because that's where we carry tremendous pressure. And then we go forwards again, and we're going to repeat this 3 times. So breathe in, push your head forward, hands back, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Go back, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Last time. And breathe out. It's always on exhalation. So you have to have breath. You have to breathe in 7, 8, and then go to the back. Breathe in, push your head back, hands forward. you have to load the body with oxygen before you really stretch these muscles, and then you let them go. Okay, and if you feel slightly dizzy at the moment, it's marvelous. It means the oxygen is reaching your brain. It is going to help you to relieve some stress. Now you put your one hand, doesn't matter left or right, against the side of your head, and just be aware of your posture. So sit as upright as you possibly can. Think of your spine as a string of beads, and imagine there's a line in the sticking out the crown of your head, and just pull that string so the beads, which is your spine, can be nice and straight and aligned. Okay, and then you put your hand to the side of your head. Same story. Breathe in. Head's going to move to the left, hand's going to push to the right. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Drop. Nice deep breath in. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And we're going to repeat it 2 more times. So it's breathe in, nice and straight, and breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And the other side as well. Why? For a count of 8. While we do this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, because it takes the muscles between 8 and 30 seconds to relax, to change the length of the muscles. So the moment we tense, the moment we exhaust it, and there's a lot of tension in your body, the muscles shorten. That's why they feel lumpy sometimes. Okay, and that's why our bodies become so rigid. But the moment you do what we've just done, we lengthen, we don't stretch. When you stretch a muscle, it's like an elastic band. It will go back to its original length. But the moment you lengthen a muscle, it means you hold a posture for a count of at least 8, or you can do 30. But in terms of time this afternoon, we do it for a count of 8 because it is effective if we do it for a count of 8. So I want you to do a quick post test. Let's just turn your head and look across your shoulder and compare up to where could you see earlier on, and do it to the other side as well. And I wish I could see your faces to know if you've experienced what I've just experienced, which my head is naturally turning way further to the sides. Why? Because we've just removed some of the stress in the shoulders and neck area. And what is fascinating about stress in the shoulders and neck area, it impairs listening and it impairs eye movements. So it has an enormous effect on our ability to listen and our ability to read, or to look, but to read as well. So the next one, we're going to do 3 mind moves. The next one is called the palm stretch, but we're going to do 2 movements, 2 mind moves simultaneously. We're going to open the hands, and for now, just open your hands and close them and feel what your hands feel like. Feel if there's any tightness in your hands. Feel what they feel like, okay? And we're going to open them up as wide as we possibly can for a count of 8, but we're going to do something else simultaneously. We're going to stretch our calf muscles as well, because our calf muscles, when there's stress, when there's anxiety, when there's fear, when there's exhaustion, what happens, the calf muscles pull up. It's called a tendon guard reflex, and that reflex enables the calf muscles to contract in readiness to fight or to flee. Okay, so we're going to push the heels down. Can you feel when you raise your toes? Can you feel what your calf muscles feel like? Okay, so just flex your feet and be aware of your calf muscles. Okay, we've done the hands already. So what we're going to do, this is high level. We're going to push the heels down, raise the toes, and stretch the hands simultaneously. Are you with me? So hands open, heels down, toes up. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Relax. Okay. Now clench your fist as tightly as possible. Toes up again. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Why am I bouncing? Because you know when we sit, we actually sit at on a part of the brain. So the moment we start bouncing, we get the cerebral spinal fluid to move as well. So let's open the hands. We need to do this twice more. Okay? Heels down, toes up, hands open. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Relax. Okay? Toes up, heels down. Clench the fist. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Last one. Hands open, heels down, toes up, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Clench your fist. Relax the legs for a moment. Raise them. Push those heels down, toes up, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And just flex your hands and feel what your hands feel like. Flex your feet and feel what your calf muscles feel like. And maybe they feel the same. Chances are slim that they'll feel worse, but maybe your hands feel a bit looser. And so do your calves, maybe. And then the last mind move is one of my absolute favorites. It's called the Rise and Shine. And it's called the Rise and Shine. And it's a play on the English play called The Glass Menagerie. In The Glass Menagerie, there was a boy who didn't have a particularly good relationship with his mom. And every morning she would say, "Rise and shine." And he said, "I will rise, but I will not shine." So I found that so funny that I decided, let's create a move. It's actually not created, it's mimicking the Morrow reflex, which says breathe in, open your arms out as wide as possible, because the more stressed we become, the more hunched our posture becomes, because we're trying to protect our hearts. Open that heart. Open that heart. Can you remember Hawkins' table? Can you remember the influence that you have when you work from a position of love? But to be able to work from a position of love, you first need to open up that heart. So take a deep breath in, open your arms wide, breathe out, and give yourself a hug. Give yourself a hug. You can close your eyes if you want to, and you can just hold 5, 6, 7, and 8. And we do it again. Breathe in, breathe in, breathe in. Rise. And first relax, and then we'll shine. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Deep breath in. And breathe out slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Just listen to your breathing. Did you block your breathing? In other words, you were not exhaling while we were giving ourselves a hug. So the moment you stopped hugging yourself, you would breathe out. It's a sure way to maintain stress in your body. So let's do it one more time. So you breathe in while you open your arms wide. And you breathe out slowly, slowly, slowly. Control your breathing. When you breathe less, you powerless. When you breathe full, you feel powerful. If you look on the screen, you may also notice the posture right at the bottom, because when you've got a parent interview, or if there's a challenging situation, it would be rather strange if you sat there doing this during the conversation. But what you can do is cross your ankles, cross your hands in your lap, put your tongue on your palate. Remember, I said earlier on, we feel emotions in our hearts, but the limbic system, the emotional part of your brain, is actually situated just above your palate. So when your tongue pushes against your palate, it stimulates the emotional part of the brain, and it evens out one's emotions. Okay, so you cross your ankles, you overlap your hands, tongue on your palate, and take one last deep breath. We call this the confidence booster at the Mindfulness Institute. Ladies and gentlemen, I would so love to hear your feedback. And I will just now, let's just complete this part, and we've got time. we'll have a conversation. So please get your questions ready. Please don't put them in the chat. Let's chat with each other this afternoon. Please just look at your goal, the goal that you set earlier on, the one that was about you, because it's under your control, the one without a want or must or shall, that goal, and the goal where you accept the consequences of, which is not a negative thing, but you accept that it may impact on your life and other people's lives. But what you're going to gain by achieving this goal by far outweighs the price that you're going to pay. Just look at that goal and rate your current feeling in terms of how achievable is this goal now. And I wonder if there's anybody that would like to give feedback, to just unmute themselves and just give us feedback. I would love to know if there's anybody whose score is lower than it was before. Anybody whose score is lower? I would love to know how many people, or if there's anybody who feels the same. And I would love to know if anybody feels any better. In other words, the score is higher because we said a 10, it makes your goal attainable. And what I found through the years of using this technique with myself, my family, and with clients, it's a sure way of moving away from teacher burnout. And the thoughts and the feelings and everything that's involved with that sense of burnout and close to feeling apathy. This has always been a sure way to move us forward. See, I find this quote by Katie Reed fascinating. Katie Reed says, self-care is giving the world the best of you instead of what's left of you. See, sometimes we're working so flat out in our personal relationships. We work so flat out in our jobs, in our communities, that there's very little left. And if there's very little left, think of Hawkins and his table, there's very little to give. So I hope this afternoon is giving you a couple of tools. You can do the mind moves and it will give you an immediate effect. But it is so much more effective within the context of a goal. Teacher burnout, if you Google teacher burnout 2021 and you read the articles that are there, it's a reality for many, many people. But sometimes it starts with the first step. The first step is stop, no more. I want something different.